Welcome back to the news at 10. The President has once more pledged to provide stronger oversight functions and funding for polio programs in the country. To this end, President Muhammadu Buhari says he's reconstituting an expanded presidential task force on polio, which will include the 36 state governors to sustain the gains already recorded. The President was speaking at the signing of the updated Abuja commitment on polio eradication in the presidential villa. Also present at the event were the chairman of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Bill Gates, as well as the chairman of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote.
I would like to assure you that the federal government will continue to provide strong oversight and funding for polio program. To this effect, we will constitute an expanded presidential task force on polio, which will include 36 state governors to sustain the successes of our current polio eradication activities, such as surveillance and routine immunization programs. I am pleased to inform you that the 6 states mostly impacted by polio have signed a memorandum of understanding on routine immunization. This memorandum of understanding is a commitment by the state governments, namely Kano, Bauchi, Borno, Kaduna, Sokoto, and Yobe, to strengthen primary health care system through immunization, sensitization, and support programs.
And staying on that subject, it's good news going by the partnership between the Dangote Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which is aimed at stepping up the government's immunization efforts against the child killer disease. A memorandum of understanding among the parties has been signed.
Northern states governors, traditional rulers, diplomats, development partners and other stakeholders are here to witness Africa's business magnate Alhaji Aliko Dangote and Microsoft chairman Mr. Bill Gates sign a memorandum of understanding. This is a new partnership between Dangote Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation aimed at keeping Nigeria polio-free, starting from the northern region. And the governors are excited about this support.
We feel motivated and we feel encouraged because it is giving us room again to consolidate more so that the disease can finally be eradicated from Kano State and Nigeria.
Under the agreement, the two foundations will offer technical and financial support to end vaccine-preventable child deaths in Nigeria.
Bill Gates and I are very, very pleased to extend our partnership by additional 1 year in Kano State to focus. They have actually been of a great help, and the development partners to continue with their support.
I'm particularly impressed that as you're facing very tight budgets, that you've been willing to put 15% of your state budget into the health sector, and that really shows the priority that you put in this area. So both very good condensed reviews and exactly the kind of things we're working with you to achieve.
Nigeria was delisted from a list of polio endemic countries in September 2015 after 1 year without a case of the virus. But continued immunization and surveillance are needed to ensure that Nigeria is certified polio-free in 2017.
Let's shift focus from health issues now. And after laying to rest the controversy surrounding the 2016 budget, federal lawmakers in the National Assembly have begun debating it. In the Senate, lawmakers are expressing divergent views. Some of his opposition lawmakers in the PDP are criticizing the budget based on the government's capacity to fund it, considering falling oil prices. Our correspondent Linda Akigbe reports.
Debate on the appropriation bill.
After weeks of back and forth over the status and whereabouts of the budget, lawmakers in the National Assembly are finally debating the 2016 budget. The total budgetary allocation for 2016 is 6.8 trillion naira, an increase of 1 trillion naira from the revised allocation of 5.9 trillion naira for 2015. 2.648 trillion is for recurrent expenditure, 1.85 trillion for capital expenditure, and 1.475 trillion for debt service. The present administration has described the 2016 budget as a budget of change, but some lawmakers from the opposition disagree.
A budget that moves domestic spending within Aso Villa from 580 million to 1.7 billion cannot be a budget of change.
I suggest that this House, this Senate, together with the executive, should take a second look at this budget and peg the benchmark at a more realistic value of perhaps between $20 and $25.
But some lawmakers from the ruling party have a more positive view of the 2016 budget.
The proposal before us is the first in the last 17 years that an allocation of 30% of the appropriation is given for capital.
Constituency.
The budget debate in the House of Representatives was less passionate. The majority leader kick-started the debate.
This budget is epic and historical because it is perhaps the first really all-inclusive budget that seeks to carry all Nigerians along. The rich, the not so rich, the poor, the not so poor, and the vulnerable.
The budget debate is expected to continue on Thursday, January 21st.
The ayes have it.
Now, when the upper legislative chamber summoned the central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, over the downward slide of the naira against the benchmark currencies, he visited the National Assembly and told senators that he's worried about the situation as well. However, he noted that the CBN is putting in place policies aimed at expanding economic opportunities and stimulating growth for the country. Well, joining me on the news at 10 to discuss the fallout of all this is an economist, Dr. Boniface Chizia. Thank you so much for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Yeah, well, we just saw there the debate that they had on the floor. Let me just ask you quickly what you made of the submissions they had there.
Well, I think that it's lively. I think it's to be expected. When you talk of capacity to implement the budget, I think that we should leave that to the future. I mean, the government has laid out its plan to say, this is what we're going to spend on the budget, and this is how we're going to mobilize the resources to do so. And now you talk about borrowing, so if you say we're going to borrow so much externally, you cannot begin from now and begin to second guess, whether we are going to be able to do that. So I'd expect that for me, then I've not seen too much of an issue there, if you ask me.
It's all about the naira, isn't it? And we've seen the volatility in the market. We've seen what the CBN is trying to do with frequent pronouncements. And the last time you were here, I remember you saying it's going to be a long road to recovery. A long one, it does seem. What do you think we can do to get out of this right now?
Well, I think that the first thing I want to say is that I think it's a good thing that the Governor Central Bank is going to have a discussion with the Senate. I think that they're an important stakeholder in the economy. That's part of the structure we should put in place. So he talks to them, he explains to them, they see his position, and it's come out of this discussion and they endorsed his policy on the naira. Okay, so you're saying, what
we can do exactly to get out of it.
I think another point you made is about the changes, frequent changes in policies. I think also we need to say that, we must come to terms with the fact that we have a crisis on our hands in terms of the foreign exchange. So obvious to everybody. And what the central bank is trying to do is that the central bank is coming out with policies and stakeholders, concerned Nigerians are trying to find a way to circumvent these policies. And as that is happening, so central bank is challenged. They need to make sure that they don't get away with it. So we find that that's reaction. And so I would expect that Nigerians will have to be patient. I would expect that in the short term, we'll get over this and we'll begin to have some stability.
All right, Mr. Boniface Chizia, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on the news at 10 tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has been speaking on the federal government's plan to tackle unemployment in the country. In an exclusive interview with Channels Television's Chebole Nuso at the presidential villa, Professor Osinbajo says, contrary to misconception about the conditional cash transfer, the scheme is well thought out and will cater for thousands of unemployed youths in the country.
There's a bit of misrepresentation of what it is. First, it is to the poorest in our society. It is not to unemployed young people. Some people have suggested that we're giving 5,000 naira to unemployed young people. No. What we're doing for young people, graduates and the unemployed, is what I've explained, you know, the teacher scheme, as well as vocational training, etc. Then we're looking at other aspects of social investments. We're looking, for instance, at youth employment. Now, youth employment is very crucial, you know, especially because we know now, with all of the, you know, percentages of out of school graduates and also undergraduates who, you know, who have been out of school for a while and who have no jobs. We think that for graduate employment, you know, the direct creation of jobs, they teach Nigeria, that 500,000 teachers will do some, will address some of that concern. But for those who are not graduates, we have, we're looking at investing in that also substantially. And how we intend to do that is by this youth employment scheme. What that would involve is training. You know, there'll be a lot of training, vocational training in vocational skills, training in entrepreneurship, business methods, and all of that. And we intend to, just as we train, we also intend to engage them.
The Vice President there, Professor Yemi Oshibaju. Now let's take a look at some business news for today. Here's Adeshawa Josh.
You first. First Bank.
Thank you, Ijoma. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Business News. I am Adeshawa Josh. The World Economic Forum, WEF, in the Swiss ski resort town of Davos has formally opened with calls for cooperation and collaboration against the backdrop of rising inequality and crisis in Europe and the Middle East. Around 2,500 participants from more than 100 countries, including 1,500 business leaders and more than 40 heads of states and government, are all attending the annual meeting, which runs from January the 20th to the 23rd.
In his opening speech, World Economic Forum Chairman and founder Klaus Schwab focused on the need for dialogue and cooperation and paid tributes to young global leaders.
We are here, leaders from all walks of the life, political leaders, business leaders, our partners and our members, but also I would like to welcome the representatives of civil society, particularly also the young people. We feel, with a median age of 27 in the world, young people have to be engaged. So I welcome particularly our young global leaders, our global shapers, and our social entrepreneurs.
Schwab added that the Davos event was more than just a conference.
Davos is not just an event, it's not just a conference. It is an experience. And I have 3 wishes. When you leave, the first wish, I hope you have made many friends here. And friends, particularly from other countries, bridge building. Second, I hope that you go home with one transformative idea, not just for your company, but for yourself. And finally, I hope you go home and you are, as myself and all my colleagues, convinced that the future of our small global village can only be well managed if there is as much dialogue, collaboration, and cooperation.
Among the key figures in Davos will be the United States Vice President Joe Biden, Secretary of State John Kerry, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the foreign ministers of both Iran and Saudi Arabia.
In the meantime, Africa has been advised to boost its electricity policies and regulatory environment in order to attract global investments. The head of energy sector of the World Economic Forum, Mr. Roberto Boca, mentioned this in an interview with Channels television anchor Harriet Agbeyi at the ongoing World Economic Forum in Davos. Mr. Barker believes in spite of the economic downturn globally, Africa has the opportunity to transform its economy if it improves its power infrastructure.
We look at Africa in general and Sub-Saharan Africa in particular. I think in the African continent, only 1/3 of people have access to electricity. The electrification is very low. And as you said, this is the fundamental element. Without electrification, without access to energy, it's impossible to have economic development. So what is important here is really to have policy, but also the regulation that enable investment to come in. I think the world is now ready to tackle the issue of energy access that is so important in Africa. And I think what is really important is to have investability of any project, of any activity related to energy in Africa.
So in your relating with companies, are you encouraged by what has been achieved so far in the sub-region?
I think there have been a lot of good example of vision, a lot of good example of policy being put in place. What still need to be perpetuated and improved is to have the regulation that enable the investment to come, and also regulation that are constant in time, so that there is not uncertainty for the investor.
Let's bring it back home and check out how the Nigerian equities market fared today. It did bounce back to winning ways at the close of trading after 10 consecutive days of bearish trade. The all-share index is up by 3.91%. Bisi Adebayo tells us more.
Hello and welcome to the stock market reports. After 10 consecutive days of bearish trade, key indicators at the Nigeria equities market turned green on the back of gains recorded by some market heavyweights. The all-share index grew by 3.91% to end midweek session at 23,335.01. Market capitalization also climbed to 8.02 trillion naira. Nestle led the day's price gainers with 5%. Dangote Cement and WAPCO also appreciated by 4.36% and 4.34% respectively. Wednesday's top three laggards were Seplat with 5%, Ashaka Cement with 9.43%, and Flour Mill with an 8.40% loss. Bank stocks remained the major contributors to market volume, and top on that list was FCMB with 37.29 billion units. At the end of the day's session, volume came in at 242.53 million shares, valued at 1.58 billion naira in 3,865 deals. That ends the stock market reports. I am Bisi Adebayo.
Thanks a lot, Bisi. And some other major markets around the world have closed trading for the day. Let's check out their closing figures. That's business news tonight. The news at 10 continues in a moment.
First Bank.
The managing director of the Nigeria Export Processing Zone, Mr. Gbenga Kuye, says the Lagos Deep Offshore Logistics Ladol can now be described as an industrial park given the growing enterprise and capacity at the Free Zone. Mr. Kuye, who visited the multi-million-dollar fabrication yard at Ladol, says he's pleased with the number of Nigerians who are working on jobs that were in the past reserved for expatriates.
Have you ever wondered what really happens in this area that is beyond the land space and overlooking the waters? Well, this side of the lagoon is a free zone accommodating Lagos Deep Offshore Logistics Base, Ladol. In addition to being the region's largest base for rig and vessels repair, a world-class fabrication yard has touched base. To run a professional eye on the activities here, the managing director of Nigeria Export Processing Zone Authority, returns to Ladol after 15 months of his first visit. The transformation is clear for all to see. This integrated fabrication yard has over 500 Nigerians working, a clear move which attests to the deepening of local content.
And what we've done is invest $450 million so far, turning a swamp area inside Apapa port into the world-class zone you see here. Inside Ladol, we do first-class logistics, and in keeping with the need to lower the price of services and to increase efficiency, our deep offshore logistics support for drilling and production is 50% of the prevailing costs. So that's a massive cost saving for the Nigerian people, massive cost saving. In addition, our fabrication and integration is the only one in the whole of Africa. The cranes we have here, you can't find them anywhere else. The facilities we have in our fabrication yard, you can't find anywhere else. So we can build ships inside Ladol for Nigeria and for the whole of West Africa.
The multi-million-dollar investment here, according to the NEPSA boss, is capable of jump-starting in a large scale Nigeria's industrialization.
What I've seen here is really something to reckon with. It's world class, and the fact that for every 2 Korean that I see or 1 Korean that I see 8 Nigerians is wonderful. It's all about diversification of the economy, and that's what we're doing here.
For Ladol, the guiding light has been to push Nigeria into the league of G20.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigerian Professional Football League club FC Ifeanyoba signed 6 Brazilian players for the 2015-2016 season. And that will be on sports. Please stay with us.